Hello, and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, counselor, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. We pray that you will be encouraged by this podcast. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick. Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I'm here this week with Jess Ronne. She is an author, speaker, podcast host, documentary producer at caregiverdoc.com and caregiver advocate. She is founder and executive director of the Lucas Project, a nonprofit dedicated to providing recognition and respite for special needs families. She and her husband Ryan live in Michigan with their 8 children, including their son Lucas, who has profound special needs. Her story of beauty from ashes has been shared on the Today Show, Daily Mail, and Huffington Post, and is detailed in her memoir, Sunlight Burning at Midnight. To follow the ongoing saga, she can be found at jessplusthemess.com or purchase her latest book, Blended with Grit and Grace. Jess, thank you so much for coming on the Hopecast this week.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I found you when you went on Davy Blackburn's podcast, who is a fellow widower, and loved hearing you share your story there, and then jumped on social media, and your posts are such a good combination of authenticity and warmth and humor. You somehow managed to mix some really hard things in life with a relatability that's beautiful, and I love that.
Well, thank you. That's an awesome compliment. That's what I try to do, is not put heavy stuff. I don't like heavy stuff to feel too heavy. I really appreciate
Well, and in
that.
doing that, you make it approachable, because I think that there's things about the special needs community that are intimidating. I don't know what this is. I don't know how to help. I don't know how to be present here. I'm afraid to say the wrong thing. And you give people permission to step into your story. So let's back up for the listeners and start a few years ago, before you met your current husband, and start us in on how you got to where you are now.
Well, I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, and it was more than a few years ago at this point. We're celebrating our 11th anniversary this month. So yeah, it's been quite the ride. I guess I like to say my story starts in 2004 when I went to what I thought was a routine 20-week ultrasound appointment for my second child. And it was there that I found out that the baby had suffered a stroke in utero, and there was very little hope. And they suggested termination. The doctor said, "You're young and healthy. You won't have any problems getting pregnant again. These fetuses have a way of spontaneously aborting. You'll be doing this baby a favor. Just, get rid of it and try again." And my husband, Jason, and I refused to do that. We decided to put the baby in the Lord's hands and just have faith that, if the baby was supposed to live, he or she would live. If not, then the Lord would take the baby home. And August 12, 2004, I was cut open from one side of my belly to the other to accommodate baby Lucas's head, because it was the size of a 2-year-old's at birth, because of all of the cerebral spinal fluid buildup in his brain. And he came out just screaming with life, and I just wept in relief. I couldn't believe it. Like my baby had made it. 2 weeks later, they handed him to us out of NICU, and they said, good luck, here's your baby. And that was my introduction into the world of special needs parenting.
Okay.
Although I didn't really even grieve. I was just so thrilled to be going home with a live baby. And I often say,
because you were ready for a stillborn.
Yeah, I was ready for death. So to walk out of the hospital with my baby, there was no grieving. We were going to take whatever came our way. I did all of my grieving during my pregnancy. And we came home. It was hard. He didn't sleep great. He had delays. He wasn't reaching his milestones. But again, we were just thrilled we had our baby, and ended up pregnant again in 2007, had our daughter Mabel. And then Jason, my husband, began having all of these unexplained health problems. He was losing his vision, losing weight like crazy, very disoriented. And he just kept going to specialists, and they kept saying, you have to get your blood sugar levels under control, which was so strange. He was a tennis professional, a gym owner, a personal trainer. So like anybody who should be able to manage their blood sugar levels, it would have been him. And then one night I just asked him, "Are you feeling okay? I just want a quick run across town to my dad's house and pick up something," because he would have good days and bad days. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm good." So I ran across town, drove into the driveway, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Jason. He said, "Jess, call 911," and the phone went dead.
Oh,
So I
wow.
whipped back home. He had had a seizure, but right before seizing until he passed out, he put a movie in for Caleb, put Lucas in his exercisor, and put baby Mabel in her bouncy seat. And then he seized until he passed out. And that became one of the longest nights in my life. It ended up being he was diagnosed with a baseball-sized brain tumor. He was prepped for immediate surgery. It went extremely well. They removed almost 95% of the tumor, and it was only a grade 2. So they said, "You can just watch and wait. We don't have to do chemo or radiation." And they, signed him out of the hospital, and we went home and just got on with our life. Ended up unexpectedly pregnant again in 2009. We weren't planning on that baby. We had kind of talked about a fourth, but it wasn't like on our radar. And Jason was just going to quarterly MRI appointments to monitor the tumor. And in the middle of that pregnancy, I got a call from him at one of his appointments. He was extremely irritated. He said, "Jess, the tumor's back. I have to check myself into ER immediately." So that's me, scrambling to find care for my 3 children. They're 5 and under. I'm pregnant with our 4th. And long story short, he had another baseball-sized tumor. They did surgery, and this time it came back a grade 4 glioblastoma, which meant a life expectancy of about 14 months. And that's exactly what he made it, was 14 months. He passed away August 24, 2010. I was a young widow with 4 children under 6, including one with profound special needs.
Where do you even go with that? I mean, I, being widowed, felt completely devastated and undone, and I don't know my life. And I had 2 7-year-olds without special needs. Like, did people come around you? Did you fall in a hole and just not come out for a while? What'd you do?
I didn't fall in a hole. I actually credit my kids, because I had to get up. I mean, you know how that goes. I think without my kids, I would have laid in bed all day and, gone into a deep depression. But 4 kids and one with profound special needs, people were happy to help, but not so much with Lucas. He kind of scared them. They didn't understand his needs. So somebody had to get up and change his diaper and put him on the school bus. And I really credit my kids with keeping me moving towards something life-giving. And yeah, I had hundreds of people. I didn't make a meal for over a year. I, got so sick of casseroles. I never wanted to see a casserole again.
Fajitas, somebody bring me fajitas.
Somebody did, and it was the best one. It was the best meal I'd ever received. But yeah, people held me up. And what people don't often understand either is Jason's brain cancer journey was 3 years long. So I had really gone through a lot of the stages of grief. And by the time he finally passed away, I'd really reached a level of acceptance. Not that I wanted him to die, but I didn't want him around either the way he was, because he was in so much pain. And what people don't understand about brain cancer is it strips you of everything that makes you you. And towards the end, it was like one more very intense child almost that I was caring for, because he couldn't do
his ability to regulate bodily functions, or all of it?
Everything's gone. He's falling out of bed. Caleb, my oldest 6-year-old, and I are lifting him back into bed. He can't feed himself. Caleb's feeding him. Like it's all gone. And so, yeah, there's a sadness, but there was also a relief that he was healed and he was whole and he was in heaven. And the kids and I could start to kind of rebuild our lives somehow, whatever that was going to look like.
Start rebuilding your lives. That is such a weighty statement, when everything has been stripped away. And then when you have a child with special needs, there's a death of dreams of typical kid development. and you're already in the midst of rewriting your story that you expected and the family that you thought you would have. And now you've lost your husband, your partner, your co-parent. So from what I know of your story, because I love listening to it and hearing you tell it in other spaces, you met a fellow widower who you guys were just kind of supporting each other through the loss of your spouses.
Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned, Jason passed away in August, and October of that year, I got all the kids ready to go out trick-or-treating. And I had blogged through not 9 years, 3 years with Jason's brain cancer, and had amassed a pretty big audience who was, wondering how I was doing, how he was doing. And we came home from trick-or-treating that night, and I checked my blog and checked my comments, and a woman who lived in Pennsylvania, a total stranger, had left a comment, and she just said, "Jess, I have no idea why I'm telling you to do this, but I feel impressed to tell you to go look at this widower's blog." He lives in Oklahoma. His wife passed away from brain cancer 4 days after Jason died. He has 3 young children, and he's not doing very well. And she said, "I feel like you could be a source of encouragement to him." So I went and found his blog, just left a little comment, just saying, "Hey, my husband passed away 4 days before your wife. If you ever want to talk, I'm here," type of thing. And I woke up the next day to an email. And the first week or two was just emailing, like pouring out our hearts to each other and, finding encouragement and strength through one another. And then that quickly changed to phone calls. And within a month, I would say we were getting pretty serious and planning to meet for the first time.
Okay. And so I know from being in the widower community that people can be judgmental about our process and our timeline.
Yep.
What kind of feedback did you guys get for that timeline?
It was very hush-hush. And honestly, I don't even know that we cared.
Good for you. Not that you should, but people have opinions.
They did. But we were like so enamored and in love and in this weird space even of grieving somebody we loved and falling in love with a new person and just trying to process all of that. And then also making sure our 7 grieving children were doing okay, that I don't think we really cared. And we had both been loyal, faithful spouses through horrific circumstances. This was not a divorce.
Yes, you did.
We did cheat on, on our spouses. And I think that narrative really needs to change, especially when it comes to widows and widowers, because there is a lot of shame and guilt attached when they start to move on. But our vows say till death do us part. And I felt something literally in the spiritual realm rip off of me the moment Jason breathed his last. Like I was not married anymore. And I couldn't live in this lie of even pretending. I'm such a realist. I'm so black and white that it didn't make sense to try to pretend that he was coming back or that he hadn't left, or I needed
Well, and you'd had 3.5 years to grieve progressively.
Yes. And the funny thing is that a week after Jason's funeral, his mom, who is an incredibly godly woman, pulled me aside and she said, "I'm praying for your next husband." She said, "I know you can't do this life on your own with 4 kids under 7, and you're going to need a godly man to come alongside you." And I looked at her and I said, "Mom, this is not on my radar." And she goes,
I was going to say, were you ready for that comment at that point?
Not at that point, but I think she gave me permission. She was the only permission I really needed. And I don't even know that I needed it. Like I needed the Lord's okay. I needed his stamp of approval, but her permission did allow me to look at Ryan in that way a few months later and say, Jason's mom has been praying for this. This could potentially be an answer to her prayer. And she adores Ryan. And she said to me too, she had a dream and she said, "The Lord showed me that Jason ran his race faithfully, and now it's time to hand the baton over to another man." And no, I'm going to get choked up.
That's a beautiful story picture. I'm getting choked up.
So yeah, I think her permission was the most beautiful, life-giving gift she could have ever given me, in order to move forward.
Yeah, that's unusual, I think, for her to have the freedom in her heart, because I think for a lot of in-law parents, it's really scary because that means then that there's a separation or change in the relationship with your grandkids, maybe distance, what does that look like? And those grandbabies are their connection to the son or daughter that they lost. And so there's a lot of times a really defensive reaction to the spouse like remarrying or getting in another relationship. So I applaud her
Yeah,
for the internal strength to process that and then express it to you. That's really cool.
she did it right. And I hope other people hearing this can follow suit, because, when you go through something like what you and I went through too, there is no timeline. And to, I think, withhold that happiness, that potential happiness by moving forward in life is really taking away a gift from that family, if it's the right thing and it's God ordained.
Yeah. Grief makes us really selfish. All of us individually can only see our own pain for a time. And so I think a lot of comments and reactions come out of their pain. And if they were in their right mind, they wouldn't want to hurt us. But a lot of pain is transferred through a lack of awareness of their own pain and their reactions to it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Tell me about you and Ryan dating and then getting married and bringing together your 7 children.
Well, we hardly dated. We flew back and forth a few times, realized that we were in love, and we were married within a year. We ended up getting married in 2011.
Okay.
We just didn't see any reason to wait. It really felt God-led, and we knew we would have stuff to deal with, and we did. But we all wanted to be under one roof. All of our kids agreed, and we had their blessing, and they were so excited. And so he moved to Michigan, and we adopted each other's kids. I had 4, he had 3, and we took care of that pretty immediately because we wanted everybody to feel like a family. And then a few years after living in Michigan, we ran away to the middle of nowhere in rural Tennessee, bought a huge, dilapidated 6,000 square foot home that needed total renovation.
Because you needed another project.
We don't do anything easy in life, on 30 acres of land, and we hacked out the simple life. And I do simple in air quotes here because there's nothing simple about the simple life. And my husband totally renovated this home, and we had gardens, and we raised chickens, and raised our babies, and it was all really, really beautiful for 7 years. And then as Lucas became older and started going through puberty, a lot of the behaviors and the aggression really intensified, and there wasn't anything. There weren't any resources or support. Ryan ended up in ER twice with panic attacks that resembled heart attacks. I started having PTSD. Like, are you kidding, Lord? Are you going to leave me out here in the middle of nowhere with 8 kids because my husband dies? And just all this.
It was very triggering.
It was very triggering. And that's actually when I started the nonprofit, the Lucas Project, because I realized that if we were caregivers feeling this way, feeling so desperate for a break, there had to be other special needs caregivers who were also desperate for a break. So I launched the Lucas Project. We had a very successful respite chapter for a year out in the middle of nowhere at this local school. And then we kind of looked at each other one day and just said, we don't have to stay here. It kind of felt like we had to, because
we married the land and the place and the renovation.
We renovated the house, and it was we don't have to stay here. So we moved towards Nashville, thinking that would improve the resources and support and everything that we were after with Lucas. And what we discovered is the South just isn't very good when it comes to supporting special needs families.
Interesting.
And we headed back to Michigan, decided to stop putting our faith and trust in the government and in, nonprofits and other organizations, and to put our faith and trust in family and friends who loved us and cared about us and who would fill in those gaps and really help us out when we needed help. So we moved last April. We've been in the process of building our accessible dream home for Luke and all his siblings. And we were supposed to move this week, but we were delayed yet again. So
because it's not ready. Because the build isn't
COVID
ready.
And contractor issues and supply issues. And so we're another week or two out from finally being able to move in.
Well, I applaud you for doing podcast interviews while you're in the moving process.
Well, I'm at my
during
office.
spring break, you said.
Yes.
You're in spring break right now. So I really want to talk about your special needs journey in the Lucas Project in our next episode. But before we get there, will you tell us a little bit more about what it was like to begin blending your family in the midst of grief?
Initially, it was really easy. All of the kids were really young, and they were all so excited about having a new mom or a new dad and all the siblings that came along with it. So it was kind of like one big party for the first couple of years. And even Ryan and myself running on those endorphins of, new love, new romance, new everything. And we even looked at each other and we were like, gosh, this has been great. It hasn't been intense. It's been easy. And then all those kids grew up and became teenagers and they had a lot of questions, which is what we've been going through for the past couple of years. And there's like a deep well of grief over who was this parent who I hardly knew or never met even. Like Jada was 9 months old when her mom died. So initially, I think we thought, oh, it'll be so easy. They don't even know what they're missing. But that almost makes it harder as they age because there are so many questions about who this other person was and they don't have any memories. So we've been really working through very heavily with counselors and just different grief workbooks and having those conversations with the bio kids about these parents and, pouring through memory bins and pictures and letters and all that stuff just to kind of give them an understanding of who this parent was. I would say it was a lot more difficult for me and Ryan initially because of that grief while falling in love with a person. And where do these late spouses have a role in our marriage? And should they have a role in our marriage type of thing? Or do our vows say the two become one, not the four become one? And really working
the four become two.
Yes. Like what does that look like for us? And for us, it really
where'd you guys land? I mean, how did you find that? Because, we still have a birthday party for my late husband, and we, honor him along with grandpa and uncles on Father's Day or, things like that. So it's like we have brought him forward into our story on some level.
Are you remarried? I don't know.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not remarried.
And I think that's very different. For us, it became, they're not going to have a real prominent place in our marriage. They will have a prominent place in our family with our children, but they don't necessarily belong in our marriage because it did bring up a lot of insecurities. We would share things that should have been kept sacred to those relationships and not necessarily brought to the new relationship. And that's where we finally had to land. Like them being so deeply entrenched in our marriage wasn't so good for us. But when it came to the kids and the family, it was very different. And we did all those same celebrations for years when the kids were younger, releasing the balloons and planting the trees in honor of them. And then we kept moving. It was like, and I think it sort of got lost because
we left our memorial tree back at the old house
everywhere. And even our homestead, our 30-acre homestead in Tennessee, I lost a baby before we had our first baby together. And we had a memorial for that baby there too. And we had to leave it. And it's like, it's kind of painful to constantly have to leave all these memorials and So yeah, it just it got dropped along the way somewhere, but we definitely did all of those activities when they were younger.
Jess, this is awesome. I want to just do a pause here for part 1 for everybody listening. Next week on part 2 with Jessica Ronne, we are going to get more into their story and into where she's at now with Lucas and supporting the special needs community, and a documentary that they just released. Jess, tell us about that documentary, Unseen.
Well, in 2018, with the Lucas Project, the nonprofit that I started, our mission was to bring recognition and respite to special needs caregivers. And the respite part seemed really easy, just provide respite opportunities. But the recognition part was a little more difficult. Like, how are we going to make society aware of what we go through, and not only just aware, but to be a catalyst for change? And I just started brainstorming and thought, well, maybe a documentary would be a good idea, and just threw out my idea online one day in 2018. Just, hey, I have this great idea for this documentary that would showcase special needs families and sort of peel back the curtain and allow the general public into our lives. And a local filmmaker and his wife in Nashville took the bait, and they commented and said, we'd love to get together and meet. And numerous meetings later, we landed on a concept, which 4 years later is called Unseen. They followed our family around for years. And our story is kind of this constant pursuit for resources and support, and moving our family again and again and again, trying to find what we need for Lucas in order for the rest of the family to function optimally. And I couldn't be more proud of this project that we created. It's exactly what we were after, and it still maintains the dignity of everybody involved. And the in-person premiere will be April 24 here in Michigan, and then the online premiere will be May 20th. And tickets can be purchased at caregiverdoc.com.
That's awesome. I think that this is such a powerful work and an important story to share with the public, and to bring those unseen needs into the public eye in a really respectful way, so that people can step in meaningful ways into those stories. Everybody, you can find Jess at jessplusthemess.com. And if you would rate, review, and subscribe for the Hopecast with Rachael Flick, you can share the message of hope with more people. Join me next week for part 2 with Jess Ronne.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While there, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Also, another great way to stay informed with the Hopecast is to follow Rachael on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Just click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you'll be directed to Rachael's social media sites. While you're online, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.